Everyone, thanks for joining us in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'd like to introduce Rick Broida. He's a tech expert, author, blogger, podcaster, and contributor to CNET. Rick, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been very busy with eclipse coverage, so we appreciate you taking a break from the sun and moon extravaganza.
I still have my eyesight, so I'm happy about that.
Well, I have my eyesight as well, so I appreciate it. I'm thankful. So you do a lot of coverage in the tech world, and so something caught my eye. You had put out an article on 6 things you need to know when buying a laptop for college. So wanted to pick your brain on that, and I was hoping that some of this really applies when you're just buying a laptop in general, right?
Absolutely. Some of the advice here is applicable to anybody, and not even just to college students. It could be to high school students as well. But yeah, hit me up. What would you like to know?
Perfect. Okay, and we have a ton of colleges around here in Rhode Island and just in southern New England, so I think this is really applicable for our area. And a lot of people, I think it's always good when you're out shopping on the market for laptops. So wanted to pick your brain on just kind of what are some of the things that we should consider overall when you're shopping out on the market. What probably is the most important thing to look at if you're shopping?
Right, so I would advise any college student to first think about what their curriculum is going to be like. What kind of things are they going to be using the computer for? And I think the answer for most is just simply, writing papers, getting online as needed to do research, that sort of thing, which is all pretty basic. And that means you don't necessarily need something that's super fast, super high powered and so forth. Something fairly basic would probably get the job done for you. So I would advise you not to go crazy looking for, an Intel Core i7 processor and, pushing your laptop purchase into the $800-900 price range, unless you really need that power for an engineering program or something like that.
Okay, so consider what you're going to be doing the most with it, so writing papers or research. Does that kind of apply for if you're just, if you're out of college and you're looking for a laptop on your own? So if you're, what are you going to use the laptop for the most?
That's always the first question I ask anybody who asks me for advice on what laptop should I buy. I say, well, what are you planning to do with it? And again, I think mostly these days, people use a laptop for word processing, they use it for the web, they use it for email and Facebook and things like that. And you don't need a ton of horsepower to do those kinds of things. Now, there's an exception if you're planning to play games, especially a lot of the really graphics-intensive games. That requires a bit of horsepower. That requires a good discrete graphics card. But most of us, especially on the academic side of things, you can get by with not too much.
Okay, so you need to think about that. And you said the next thing we should all consider is size matter. And you're talking about screen size. Why is that important?
Right, so the screen size is really going to dictate the overall size of the laptop, and I really think the sweet spot, especially for students, is a 13-inch or 13.3-inch screen. That's going to give you really the best combination of size and weight. Something that you don't often consider is, you're going to be lugging this around all day in a backpack that's already probably loaded with books. How many more pounds do you want to add to that backpack? So by looking for a 13-inch screen, you can find yourself a reasonably thin and light laptop, something in the 3-pound range that won't break your back by the end of the day.
Yeah, no kidding. I know when I was shopping for a laptop, I was kind of like, oh, here's the 13-inch or the 15-inch. And I felt like the 13-inch for me was too small for what I was doing. But now that I have the 15-inch, I'm thinking, did I really need this much size, right? So you're thinking in that range is probably good for college students.
Again, I think it's the sweet spot. Certainly there are applications that benefit from having a larger screen, but something to keep in mind too is that most laptops, it is actually possible to plug in an external monitor. So if the time comes when you do need a big screen, you can always just kind of set up shop at your desk, plug in that big 22, 24-inch monitor to have the extra space that you need, but still have something that's really portable when you want it to be.
I like that idea. I know when I was in college, I had one of those big, I had a desktop, I didn't have a laptop.
Right.
I feel like no one probably does that anymore. Something you thought about, people should consider, do you need a touch screen?
Right, that's a great question. So a lot of laptops these days have that feature, and in fact, I think the buzzword in the industry right now is the two-in-one laptop. So it's a laptop, but it's also a tablet, and of course, tablets have touchscreens. Is that important? Is that something that college students really need? I would say it's not for most, although these are kids that were brought up on touchscreens, so they're used to scrolling. Right, they're used to scrolling the web browser with a finger or whatever. So they might just be more comfortable with it and more accustomed to it. But I don't think it's a make or break must-have feature. I will say that if you do end up with a two-in-one laptop, and again, I mean one that's that has a hinge that allows you to fold the screen around to fold 360 degrees, it's going to add a bit to the weight and thickness of the laptop versus a more traditional laptop, which can close up really flat.
Okay. Do you have any favorites? So if people are interested, they say, I must have this. This is something that I need to have. Do you have any favorite touchscreens?
You know what? It's funny. I get that question a lot.
Yeah.
What's your favorite brand? Who makes the best laptops these days? I really very, very much feel that they're all good. I don't think there's a real standout brand or a standout maker model. It's more a question of, if you can, I know there's a dying breed, a local electronics store that has laptops on display, just to get a look at the design, see if the aesthetic appeals to you, get your hands on the keyboard, pad, make sure its responsiveness is good, make sure it's comfortable, make sure there's not too much glare on the screen. It really makes sense to try to see a laptop in person before you purchase it. I don't think the brand is a big deal. They all have the same basic warranty. They all have, tech support up to a point. So those are the things I would consider.
Especially when you're shopping around, you said not necessarily the brand name, but going in shopping, you can read all the reviews you want, but it comes down to user preference and what you're going to use it for, right?
Definitely. And definitely check in with friends and family and people on Facebook and so forth. Ask them what they purchased. Crowdsourcing is a great way to make sure you end up with something that you like.
And people love giving their opinion on Facebook.
Of course.
People love doing that. You said, which I found this was pretty interesting, you said don't sweat the storage.
Right. So back in the old days, buying computers, the rule was always buy the biggest hard drive you can afford.
Yeah.
Right. And so these days, hard drives are so cheap. It's not really about the amount of storage. For students in particular, they're all cloud connected. They're all saving everything to Dropbox and Google Drive and OneDrive. So having a big hard drive on the laptop is not super important. In fact, what I would really recommend is if you're willing to spend a few dollars extra, get a solid state drive as opposed to a traditional hard drive.
Oh.
You'll probably end up with less storage space overall. You might get 256 gigabytes versus like a terabyte, but that's really more than enough space for the modern student. The exception being, unless you're doing a lot of video work, video editing, video production, that needs all the hard drive space you can give it. But an SSD is going to give you speed, it's going to give you quiet operation, it's going to give you low heat, better battery life, lots of advantages. So go SSD if you can afford it.
Okay, that's interesting. I know I was in journalism, so I had to. Now I'm in that video world editing on my laptop, but I didn't do that in college. So, but people in video production, they might be thinking about that and have to worry about the video side of things. Do people need, you mentioned battery, do people need to think about battery life when you're shopping around for laptops? Because, kids are out, I shouldn't say kids, college students, could not be accessing power source for a long time. Is battery a consideration, or is that kind of just obsolete because there's always power plugs around?
Well, I do feel like there's always power close around, whether you're studying at the dorm room or the library or whatever. It seems like there's always an outlet somewhere. That being said, definitely read some reviews to find out if battery life is an issue, like if it's particularly poor. Most modern laptops are at least going to give you 3, 4, 5 hours of operation. Some push that all the way up to 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, which of course that'll let you work all day without having to find an outlet. But I would just be aware of any particularly bad battery life, which again is much less common these days than it used to be, but something to look for.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like some the old models, you couldn't even get an hour or two out of them, right?
Right, absolutely. And they do, batteries do wear out over time, just like on your smartphone. After a year or two, three, you're going to start to see a battery hold less charge than it did before. So, obviously you want to start with the longest battery life that you can.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. And this another interesting one for maybe parents that are helping students shop. He said, forget Microsoft Office unless it's free.
Right. So Microsoft Office is kind of the standard for getting you word processing and spreadsheets and so forth, but students may be able to get that suite for free. If you have a valid .edu email address, Microsoft does offer the suite free to students, to teachers, colleges, schools of all kinds. So you just need to kind of go to their site and put in your email address and see if you qualify. Now, if you don't for some reason, there are some free Office suites that are really just as good, or at least good enough for students. One I really like is called WPS Office, and even the interface is very similar to Microsoft Office, and it is free. And even if you want to buy the premium version, I think it's like $50. So it's much cheaper than Microsoft Office, and it will give you what you need.
Okay. And does that translate format-wise? If you're trying to send in a paper via email or something like that, will professors be able to get it? Because that's always going to be stressful when they can't get the paper.
Of course, and that's a great question. Yeah, the freebie Office suites are file compatible with Microsoft Office, so that really shouldn't be a problem at all. The one thing to consider is that Microsoft's suite does integrate a little better with its cloud service, OneDrive, for cloud storage of all those important papers.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with the other suites. You just have to kind of make sure to manually set it up so that your files that you save on the laptop get synced to the cloud service of your choice. So just make sure of that.
It might just be an extra step or two.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be worth it so you're not shelling out a couple $100.
Absolutely. I'm all, college students got to have money for pizza. That's the only thing that matters.
Very true, very true. And the last one you said is to shop at the campus store. That surprised me.
Well, it's right, because as I'm the cheapskate, that's my thing for CNET, and the campus store is not necessarily always going to give you the best deal, but I would say go there for two reasons. First is you can do, as I discussed before, getting your hands on some laptops, really seeing what they look like, how heavy they are, and that sort of thing. But you also get the benefit of campus store support. Not every college student is super tech savvy, and if you're having a problem like, hey, my machine won't boot, or I just lost the paper I've been working on for the last 2 days, you might be able to get a human to help you, as opposed to you buy it online, now you really got no local help at all.
Yeah, that is very true. So just being able to have that customer service in some way or another. And like you said too, I like the idea of being able to go and shop around at whether it's a big box store or something like that, or just a campus store, just having a human to be able to help ask questions too, right?
Yes, when in doubt, find a human.
Find a human for your technology. I always like when they're like, "Oh, are you having trouble with your computer? Send us an email." It's like, I can't. That's the whole problem.
Exactly.
I can't.
How can I do online chat if I can't get online?
Yeah, exactly. I can't do it. So always interesting. What else do you think overall? So those are your 6 tips for people if you're shopping around for laptops for college. If you're not in college, what do you think? Just one general piece of advice if someone's out there shopping. You made it past college. Now you're in the real world. You're adulting. And you're shopping. Like, I kept my laptop that I had in college. I kept it for 9 years.
Wow.
I know. It was a good one. What would you say if someone's in the market for a new laptop and they're using it just like general purposes, Word, that kind of thing, emails? What's one piece of advice you have for people?
Right. So a lot of the very same advice applies.
Yeah.
Figure out what it is that you want to do with it. One thing I like to recommend people too is to consider a tablet in place of a laptop. Not so much for students, because I think students often, they might need to sign into the college, network or whatever, and tablets might be incompatible with that. But for a lot of people, if you get an iPad or even an Android tablet, pair it with a keyboard, you can accomplish virtually all the same things that you can with a laptop in a much thinner, lighter more user-friendly package. I'm always I'm always trying to get my parents to abandon their laptops in favor of an iPad with a keyboard, because you don't have to worry about viruses, and you don't have to worry about, it takes 5 minutes to boot and all these sort of things. So consider that option. And if a tablet and a keyboard won't work for you, just make sure, really just try to get some hands-on time with the model if you can. I really think that's important. And it's frustrating that the big box stores are vanishing. It's getting harder and harder to do that.
Yeah, they are dwindling. Curious on your thoughts on, because you mentioned going for the iPad or tablet, whatever case may be. What are your thoughts on Chromebooks for college students, or something along those lines?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So we totally forgot to talk about Chromebooks. So a Chromebook obviously is a laptop that's not running Windows or even Mac OS. It's running Google's Chrome operating system, which is very cloud-based, cloud-connected, and it has some advantages in that they tend to boot very quickly. You don't have to worry about viruses the way you do with Windows, and very often the hardware is very inexpensive. Now, you'll be limited. You won't be able to run Windows programs, which obviously is important for some college students, but for just the basics, your word processing, your browsing, your email, a Chromebook may very well get the job done. So it's something to look at if you can get by with those limitations. With
the basics, they're pretty inexpensive, and they can do a good amount.
They can cover the basics. It's just when you think about what Chrome does, what you can do inside a web browser.
Yeah.
It's just about everything. That's what you can do with a Chromebook, and you have a keyboard to go with it.
Yeah. All right, so considering the options. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. This has been very insightful, and I know that you have much more to do, and I always appreciate reading your articles and listening to all your podcasts. It's always quite insightful, so hopefully we can check in with you once again. You have a lot of information to give out. So
it's my pleasure. Call me when you're ready to talk about holiday shopping and how to get stuff on the cheap.
Oh, I'm in. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. I'll let you get back to eclipsing coverage.